I always try to bring something to the screen that you haven't seen for quite a while, and you know, we did that with Top Gun. There were no aviator films and Flashdance, and a great car movie, great chase movie hasn't been around. So it's time to do one.
He goes this way, boom. And action, action, action.
That we could bring something fresh and different to the screen. Scott Rosenberg, who's a writer we work with on Con Air, kind of jumped into the fray and said, yeah, I'd love to write that. That'd be a lot of fun.
The one line he gave me was, they have to steal 50 cars in one night. And I thought, that's the coolest idea in the world.
You know, our picture really goes into the character development. It's not one long car chase. We get you to vest yourself in the character, give you more humor, more drama.
Look, you know, I got everything under control.
Kitchen's on fire.
Basically, we realized that since the hero is essentially a criminal, pulled out of retirement, we had to really give him a reason to do it, and it couldn't be based on greed. And it had to be some threat. And not a threat to him, but a threat to someone he loves.
Kip?
Who's that?
Memphis.
Oh, shit.
You okay?
Jerry had offered me a number of projects in the past. This one came along out of the blue, and I really liked it. I just thought there were opportunities there for a lot of interesting characters.
When I gave him the first draft, Jerry said, who'd you have in mind for these parts? And I said, well, Memphis is Nick Cage, and Kip is Giovanni Ribisi, and Sway's Angelina Jolie. Seriously, those three were like the ones I had in my head.
Scott had Nick in mind when he wrote the piece, and he was the first actor we went to and the last actor we went to, and we just chased Nick until he finally said yes.
But remember, the car is you. You are the car. That's right!
Memphis Reigns is a character that I could very easily buy into just by the nature of my own desire to drive and love of the automobile.
Action, Nick!
I think we found characters that when you put them all together, they're unique individually. There's no blandness there. You can always tell them apart. And then we have this big board, and we put all these Polaroids up on this big board and kind of mix and match the various characters, see how they all look together.
It's in keeping with the Con Air sensibility of character work within the ensemble group. I always like to be surrounded by great actors because it inspires me and stimulates my work.
Mercedes are dirty, surveillance vans all over. Where do these come from?
I knew that we had some action and some conflict and mayhem, but it wasn't just going to be an action picture. There was a chance to sort of tell an interesting story. We had the drama of these two brothers becoming brothers together. There was a romantic interest that had to be woven through it. And there was also the element of humor.
My name is Roger. Sir, may I be of some help?
That's funny. My name's Roger. Two Rogers don't make a right.
Well, there's an energy to Dominic's work that's amazing. It never lingers. Everything he does really moves very quickly, and I like that. I don't like to get bored while I'm sitting in the theater. You know, I don't want my butt to hurt. So we try to keep things moving along, and Dominic does it.
Jerry cares about making movies. He cares a lot. I care a lot. We both care a lot in each other's faces sometimes, but I think it's all worked out for the best.
It's totally on the edge, yeah, but Jerry likes that.
We always try to hook you with the characters in the story, and hopefully you'll want to sit through the whole movie, and it'll excite you, make you laugh, and you'll have a good time. That's what it's about.
It really pulls you out of the movie, you know, when you can't see the star of the movie driving the damn car. And I just knew that Nick was a car buff. I thought that was a plus because I suspected he could really drive a car.
Nick really was into it. He's a big car enthusiast himself, and he's got the Lamborghinis, the Labos, he's got the Ferraris. So he was really into it.
I just knew that Nick would be able to do it, and sure enough, and he got behind the wheel of that car and scared the shit out of everybody. That's him doing all these 180s and 360s and driving down the riverbed. I mean, he does most of his own stunts, so it just makes all the difference in the world to see him behind the wheel and see the buildings going by and see police cars swerving behind him, as opposed to the sort of green screen thing where somebody's rocking the car and the guy's sitting over the sandwich,
Nick wanted to do it. You'd have to drag him out with a crane to get him out of that car.
The cars are a handful alone, without any cameras on them. Then you add, 200 to 300 pounds of camera weight, and then you add the visibility factor of lighting, lights in the eyes, or the obstruction value of where they have these cameras mounted. Not only that, but to act and perform on camera. And I can't tell him enough how well he did in driving because of how difficult it is to deal with all those elements.
There was a lot of sweaty palms on the set when he would do a very dangerous stunt. But he was so good that I kind of relaxed a little bit. The studio wasn't happy, nor was the insurance company.
Great. Very good.
We sent Nick to Bob Bondurant's race car driving school in Phoenix. He went to Willow Springs. He went out to a school out in Camarillo called Bobby Orr's Stunt Driving School, which taught him the physical aspects of how to do the stunt type driving along with the race car driving. It's the homework that you do ahead of time, and it takes some of the danger out of play.
I really enjoyed the race car driving school, and that was a whole other thing, which I went on to pursue a little bit more on my own now as well.
We went to learn the parameters of driving, not just for sense of speed, but why you take a turn, why you hit the apex at a certain point. So all those elements really intrigued him.
I can drive pretty well, especially since I went to this school. I'm really feeling like I can connect with the automobile.
We also trained Angelina Jolie to drive.
I don't know what I was doing. I was playing. I was in some car that in first gear was like 45 miles an hour. Just insane. He had these cones and I kept going, and he said, just use the engine. Go one with the car. You point, you shoot, you point, you shoot, you point, you shoot. And then suddenly on my own, I'm driving my car around the hills going, ooh, point, shoot, point, shoot. I'm like losing my mind. I'm sure I'm gonna get arrested.
What we try to teach is controlled uncontrollability. We want to slide, we want to spin, we want to look like it's right on the edge, and this is how a good stunt driver can make it look, and yet inside the car, they're hardly doing anything. So there's a lot more to it than just jumping in the car and grabbing an e-brake and turning around.
Ooh, you want to get crazy with me?
I took a couple of day-long sessions with him in which we did 180-degree turns, stopping on a dime and going through the slalom, and we did the whole kind of gamut. It's been interesting dealing with this piece of machinery and attempting to get it to do what you want it to do.
I don't mind being in the car when it's not crashing into movable objects.
Jesus! Keep your pants on.
Other than that, it's pretty good.
Being actors, they can focus on a scene, but to focus on the action, sometimes that's not a pivotal part for them. But for this film, it was, and they had to really concentrate.
Come on!
I liked cars in a sort of testosterone, go fast sense, but now it's kind of a testosterone, go faster thing.
What the hell's the matter with you? Come on!
Hey, someone's stealing the car!
I did some cool stunt driving. I stole this Navigator, and I had to plow it over a lawn and do like a S-turn and skid out. That's some fun.
We're driving down and the police come up, so Sphinx ain't stopping for the police, and he smashes this police car all the way down the big spiral car park. It's a great scene.
Use the brakes!
We was doing all the special effects and my foot was off the pedal, so I said, shall I give it a little bit, and the back of the police car smashed right into the side of the pillar and everything, which weren't really supposed to happen. But it was good. I mean, my adrenaline was going, and I jumped out and, I had a crack with a stuntman in the other thing. I said, yeah, that'll teach you.
We lost a few BMWs at 60,000 a crack and stuff like that, but they all look pretty convincing behind the wheel. When you can actually feature the actors driving these vehicles along with the stunt people bringing their end of it to the table, which is, the dangerous stuff and the hairy stuff and the crashes. When you can marry those and they feel seamless, I think it's the best of both worlds.
I didn't know what a producer was when I was a kid. I think most people in the audience still don't know what producers do.
We're like a manager of let's say, a football team. We're not the owner. We work for the owner. The owner is the studio in this case. They supply the money, they buy the team. It's our job to get the best performance out of that team.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. I understand that completely.
I love movies. I love going to movies. I love making movies. I love creating things. You get a glow from when you take something that is an idea, and then you got, sometimes years later, you're watching an audience be entertained by that idea.
Am I a target here? Do they know me?
Who is that?
Do they know me?
I don't know what you're talking about!
Well, the first step was always finding the material, like Coyote Ugly, which was an article in a magazine that we purchased and went on to make the picture about it. Usually it takes a long time to get a script that you love. It takes years.
Okay, gentlemen. You're our warriors up there.
To get a good screenplay and to convince somebody to finance the screenplay and to make it into a movie, so you have to do a budget. And then they come and say, all right, go make the movie. That's the best case scenario. Usually it doesn't quite happen that way.
Sonar torpedoes in the water! Right full rudder! 1,000 yards in closing dive! Make your depth 1,200 feet! Hang on, everybody!
Sir, we are going down!
When you finally get that green light, then you have permission to go get a director. And the director is your partner, and you want to make sure that his vision coincides with your vision. And usually, if you get the right director, their vision is much better than yours could ever be.
Action!
We've had an enormous success rate with the directors who work with them. Tony Scott, Michael Bay, Simon West, David McNally, Dominic Sena. We've all gone on to be enormously successful. Once you've hired a director, then you start the casting process. On Remember the Titans, we always wanted Denzel. He was our first choice. He was our last choice. We went to him. He liked the script, and so he signed on.
Boy, get up! Get up! Give me the football. What is wrong with you? Why are you fumbling my football?
And then you see tons of auditions for young actors.
Camp's over, huh? We're back in the real world now.
Good. Our casting directors saw, I bet you, hundreds of young high school, college-aged actors to bring in for us to see. And they'll march in front of you and the director. You'll sit, they'll read for you. We'll put them on tape. And the more you see, the more you know you're right with the ones you pick. That's a real thrill for me to pull some kid out of a casting call, and the next minute he becomes a superstar. I believe that anybody that shows up on the screen, anything that's in the purview of the audience, that's in that frame, is important. We take real care in choosing our extras to make sure they have the right look, the right feel for the movie. You don't say, we have an extra call, we'll take 50 people tomorrow. We'll pick those 50 people. In your pre-production period, hopefully you got everything cast, you have them all costumed, you have all your sets designed. The director's proved everything. And at that point, then the meter really starts ticking and you start shooting. During that period, things constantly shift. You lose locations. Some sets aren't ready when they're supposed to be ready. So you're constantly kind of manipulating various elements to make sure you're shooting every day. Alcatraz and Further Rock was a very difficult location. There was nothing there. We had to bring everything. There was no food, minimal electricity for there. It was cold, it was damp. The fog rolled in every day. We had 1.5 miles worth of cable on the island to put electricity in the buildings that we needed to shoot in. So we had an army over there. Well, the benefit is there's only one Alcatraz. I imagine you could fake it, build a prison on a stage, but you can't get that aged, decaying, kind of classic old prison that you get from the real Alcatraz.
Welcome to the Rock.
The actors felt it. They felt the ghosts of Alcatraz were there. When they went in the real cells, they really felt confined when they shut those doors. I don't think you can get that anywhere else. In order to get your stunts safe as possible, you hire the best stunt coordinator, the best stuntman you can find. They are daredevils, but you want them to be safe daredevils. You got to make sure that they know exactly what marks they have to hit. Your special effects people have to know where the explosions go. It's about rehearsing and taking your time and doing it right. In San Francisco, the chase was well coordinated on paper long before we ever started to shoot a frame. Michael Bay worked with a storyboard artist to create that sequence. And once you get it on paper, you make lists, you give it to your AD who distributes it to all the various departments. It's their job to make sure everything's there. The fruit's there, the stand's there, somebody has to build the stand. You have to have what cars are going to be there. That's all coordinated from your script in conjunction with your storyboards. Visual effects, usually get done after the film is already finished shooting. So what you do is you'll shoot something either against a green screen or a blue screen, and you'll leave out the background. And digitally, the background will be put in. What's great about the visual effects part of it is that now your imagination doesn't have to be limited. Whatever you can conceive and dream of, we can figure out a way to do. The Paris impact in Armageddon was an afterthought. It was something that we did maybe 6 weeks before the picture opened. We decided that in the script, we lost track of the asteroid, and so we had to give the audience some little terror of what the asteroid could wreak havoc on us. And what they did is they went out in the desert and they blew up tons of sand and then started putting that tons of sand over the picture of Paris, and they kind of melded the two together, and that became the asteroid hitting Paris. As a filmmaker, what you try to do is create a canvas that's broad, expansive, that tells a wonderful story, something that you haven't seen for a long time, something that excites you and moves you. Pearl Harbor fits right into that. It's a throwback. You haven't seen a picture like this in 40, 50 years. This goes back to the classics from David Lean. He's one of our greatest filmmakers, and Michael Bay is right there with him. This is his fourth picture. All of them have been enormously successful, and this is his biggest undertaking. I mean, we were recreating the Battle of Pearl Harbor. It's the most difficult, demanding film that I've ever been involved with. Logistics are a nightmare. The amount of equipment and old planes and ships that we need is massive. It's been said my pictures have grossed about $11 billion in all revenues, which means what I'm doing people like, and that's what I do it for. I do it to entertain people. Biggest thrill for me, stand in the back of the full theater, watch people laugh, watch them cry, watch them be entertained, walk out feeling that they had an experience that left them with something, that made them feel something, and something that they would say, I want to go see it again, or tell somebody to go see it. That is the best compliment they can give me as a filmmaker, is to say that I've entertained them. That's what I try to do.
There she is. Yep. There's Eleanor.
Eleanor's Memphis' nemesis. It's a car that he's been trying to steal ever since he began stealing cars. And unfortunately for Memphis, it's on the list of cars that have to be stolen. It's an American classic.
We're gonna get through this.
It's an enormously fast car. It's a very rare car. And it's a very sexy looking car. Those are all things we wanted.
So what it comes down to is this culmination of the final car in the film that has to be stolen, and he's got it. And now it's like the heat's on because it's the last car.
Easy way or the hard way, Reigns. Easy way or the hard way.
Once you say, well, let's start in the city, then you look for the opportunities and the obstacles you're going to encounter naturally when you're shooting in the city.
That sign said do not enter. Yeah, you noticed, huh? Jesus! Keep your pants on.
Tried to steer clear of the little old ladies crossing the street, the guys with the big picture windows. So organically it just became hairy turns against red lights, about going counter to traffic that's coming your way, about encountering police who are sort of closing in on the chase from left, right, and center and behind you. All of it was done on location. That was a necessity. And as we looked around the city, we saw an alleyway we liked, and what if he gets blocked and stops just a few feet from that garbage truck? Now he has to go backwards, and everybody goes, oh yeah, well, that's kind of good. And then the thinking was, Hasselbeck is behind him not that far. We wanted to suggest that these two guys are sort of going head to head as if it were a game of chicken. But all of a sudden, at the last moment, you see that he swings into this parking garage. So we said, okay, he'll go backwards through the parking garage. He'll back out onto Main Street backwards.
That particular sequence, we had somewhere upwards of 20 different vehicles that were actual stunt vehicles, and then precision drivers on top of that.
Like sheet metal you're driving around, so it had to be choreographed and rehearsed and practiced.
As the Porsche comes out, this car here will kind of do a little swerve, maybe that way like that, kind of slide to a stop.
Chuck Picerni and Johnny Martin, both their contribution was invaluable.
It comes down to your stunt coordinator and your AD and your director working in conjunction with one another to make sure that everything they do is well rehearsed. There's no oops or uh-ohs in there.
My whole philosophy was the audience encounters these things as the driver does. There wasn't going to be any sort of foreshadowing, or telegraphing of what was coming around the bend.
For the bus crash, we deliberately set it up so there was no setup on film that you knew this was going to happen. We had the different intercuts of the lead up to it with Nick and the stunt driver driving down the alleyway. Then we see a POV from the police car's angle as Nick goes through. Then we intercut to the actual crash. The police car was put on what they call a 2-to-1 cable. We had a cable from the bus to the police car with the pulley in the street. So if the bus was traveling 30, that meant the police car was doing 60. It's a double the speed type of thing. So the bus was actually pulling the police car for the impact. That way we knew it was going to happen in the exact same spot. So it enabled Dominic to put his cameras in a position to capture everything on film.
Then I segued from there to a river basin, and that's when we thought we'd bring the helicopter in to pursue him.
Air 1, we're over the pursuit.
We took liberties there because ordinarily what would happen would be with the chopper, we'd just sort of spot the little sort of ant of a vehicle, you know, in the basin, but it wouldn't have been too terribly exciting to kept the helicopter at 500 feet, so we brought it down to about 20 feet. The pilots were terrific, and it was a little hairy because they had to come in under a lot of wires. And actually, if you notice, they were traveling under the overpasses as well. So it took a little coordinating, but that was the only way to sort of keep the choppers in the frame.
Suspect has increased speed to 120.
The thinking was, let's have Nick hit the nitrous switch and really sort of kick the car into gear and get going, simulating 100, 120 miles an hour. But when we were shooting down in the river basin, it was flooded, and it was very dangerous down there. And so the drivers couldn't actually go more than 65, 70 miles an hour, so we ended up under cranking the cameras. Normal speed, normal frame rate is 24 frames a second, so if you're shooting at 16 frames a second, when it's played back in the theater, its increased speed is about 40% faster.
You have to make your audience believe they're actually living that movie, that they're actually going, 100 miles an hour. We want to make you feel like you're there.
He's gone.
The naval yard was actually a naval yard in San Pedro, and it was defunct. They were tearing it down. And so you go to the naval yard and you just sort of say, okay, what have we done so far? So far we've seen police cars chase them. We've seen people scattering, we encountered a bus, but this was an opportunity to just up the scale. Everything at the naval yard was huge. So we just said, well, what are the biggest industrial strength vehicles we could encounter? And so one of the ideas was that Nick goes up a ramp and can't see that there's a dozer coming on the upper level. He goes airborne and lands and is able to turn and swerve out of the way of it. The police cars that followed him didn't have that luxury.
You always want to push as far as you can within safety limits, so you want to make something exciting that doesn't get anybody hurt, which, knock on wood, we did.
I put some ramps down for the police car to get some lift off of the ramp to put it into the bucket where we wanted. We gave him about 6 feet of lift, and he crashed head-on into the bucket. The police car was traveling about 30 miles an hour for the impact, so it was a pretty substantial hit. I put some tires in the bucket itself to kind of cushion the blow.
And so that became an element. And what if they're tearing it down and loading stuff up, what could they be taking away from the site? What if somebody was loading big canisters and you got freaked and one of them fell and hit the ground? Would it just sit there, or what if it didn't sit there? The canister sequence was an easy thing to sort of conceive. We came up with it over lunch, and then it actually turned out to be days and days and days of shooting to actually accomplish it. It was actually launched through the wall. Those were all actually real canisters just being fired with air cannons. It didn't have gas spewing out of it that was propelling it around the pier. It was just a canister, and all of the gas effects were created in post by Secret Lab. In some of the shots, the canister is rigged to wires and just pulled with very strong motors.
We did a lot of stuff live on set with special effects, standing in front of the police cars, but a lot of it was staged and done through visual effects to give us the preciseness of it and the impacts where we wanted them.
It's not physically possible to snap it with a cable this way and snap it back another direction, so whenever it's ricocheting off things, it's a CGI canister. The wrecking ball was actually simpler to do than the canister sequence because it was just a moment in time. We just brought the cranes and the wrecking balls to the location, built our own wall that was partially torn down already. And then we had shots where Nick was driving his car point of view. Of course, there wasn't a wrecking ball on there because there was only one Nick Cage. So in those shots, the cable and the wrecking ball are CGI, and they're created, you know, in post via secret lab.
We intercut back to the real wrecking ball for the impact. It was an unmanned vehicle with a dummy in the car. So the wrecking ball actually made impact with the truck.
In other angles, the police car was actually rigged via cable to be pulled through the wall. The wall was pre-scored, and then the moment where the wrecking ball hits it, it appears to be moving because it's cut very well.
It takes, you know, a couple of takes to get it exactly right when you're dealing with mechanics, but on the third take, you nail it right where Dominic wanted it.
I knew we had to have a big payoff, so it went from the naval yard and ended up on a bridge with an accident and him having to make a jump. So we just had to find the biggest, best bridge, you know, in Southern California and beg people to let us shut it down for a few days. Unfortunately, they did, or we wouldn't have had a payoff. We'd still be looking for a bridge. The Vincent Thomas Bridge had never been shut down. It's one of two ways into Long Beach, and when you shut it down, the people who live there get very pissed off. And so it was a hairy situation.
There he is, there he is. Get out of the car, man!
The big jump was done in a variety of different cuts. We did a lead-up version of Nick kind of stalled there, thinking of what he's going to do, contemplating then his approach to the ramp once he makes his decision to jump the accident scene. We cut from there to the actual loading truck and jumping a short distance off of that.
It only goes about 50 feet or so, and it lands into a wall of cardboard boxes that they built about 10 feet high and 100 feet long to just catch the vehicle.
Then we used a computer graphic design shot of the car for the long travel through the air, seeing the bridge, seeing the scope of the height of the bridge, all of that stuff.
Whenever it was traveling over people, those were all CGI created automobiles because it was too dangerous to actually shoot separate pieces of a real launch car.
Action. Taking the run to the ramp, and we've hit the ramp. We're airborne.
We wanted to tie a couple of shots of Nick into that sequence so that it wasn't just sheet metal, you know, flying through the air. And so what we did was we just took Nick in the vehicle, put a green screen behind him, and he just sort of acted it out as I talked him through it.
What, huh?
So we had Nick on the ground reacting as if he were airborne, and then plates were shot on the bridge of cameras moving past the girders, etc., to simulate what was behind him when he was airborne. And where the green screen canvas was, Secret Lab replaced that with a background plate in post-production. And so it appears that the background's moving behind him and he's actually airborne. Landing is real. That's actually a stunt driver taking off of an extended ramp and landing from a 25-foot height or so. They put incredibly strong shocks in there, and he actually does the landing. That's real.
Dominic Sena is a real artist. He's a visual artist. He's brilliant at what he does, and he's got a very, very exciting car chase.
On the whole, I'm pretty happy with the chase. I wanted to give the audience a ride. You know, I wanted them to be behind the wheel. I wanted them to sort of experience it as Nick was experiencing it, which I think works pretty well. I think it's fun, and I think it's a nice payoff. It was a lot of work, I know that.
I am a bad man.
Memphis is a character who was living on the edge for quite a while since he was able to drive and just had his passion for cars. And since he couldn't afford to buy that car, stealing it made him feel good. He had these joyrides, and it eventually became a business for him.
I'd boost her and just blast to Palm Springs, instantly feeling better about being me.
It's almost like an addiction, you know, you get addicted to the rush of stealing and of going fast. I've seen how it goes wrong, and I get out before anything too bad happens.
There's no room here for the gangbanger thing, all right? We're not thugs.
What I liked about it was the idea that the last thing in the world he wants to become again is a car thief, but ultimately it turns out that that's the only thing that'll save his brother's life.
Shut it off! You've got 30 seconds to consider your options. 1, you kill me, they kill you, your brother dies anyway. 2,
You lie. You accept the job, you take your brother and run. I track you down, I kill you, I kill your brother.
The dilemma for him is that I don't want to be doing this.
You make some money, and you be a good big brother.
He's a cowboy, and he's strapping his guns back on to go back for one last showdown.
8 a.m. Friday morning. The cars are on the boat, or your brother's in the coffin.
Nick is a wonderful actor. He's got pathos, he's got humor, he can be very serious, he can be very tough. You know, he's got all the goods that we needed for this movie.
Kim! Man, that's not a tool. That's a damn brick.
Kip actually has a lot of energy and enthusiasm and balls, but he doesn't have much experience when it comes to stealing cars.
Oh, come on.
Write the number.
He and his buddies are sort of young punks. They're the young Turks who sort of take a lot more chances than Memphis took. Ultimately, it gets him into trouble.
Now you've gone and done it, Rames.
It's something, you know, obviously painful to his ego, but this is a guy who pulled it off before and never had problems.
Kip is a very tough character to pull off because he's essentially a jackass.
Listen, look, no, we're talking about a lot of money here, and if
You want somebody that can play that and still be sympathetic.
What are you doing?
I'm going with him.
Giovanni was our first choice, and I really wanted him for the role, and we worked on him for a long time. I think he brings a terrific street presence to his role, and then he took the dialogue and sort of made it his own.
Does Mom know about any of this?
No, she doesn't, and I don't think she should. You know, she works really hard, and she doesn't need to know about any of this. I really wanted him to kind of grow up. That's what really fascinated me about it.
Giovanni is one of our best young actors. He's real, he's honest, and that's what I look for in an actor. Are they honest? Do you believe them? I believe Giovanni.
I played Tommy Tomo, but my name's Tumbler. I'm actually Kip's best friend.
We interviewed millions of young men for the role, and Scott just came in and really jumped off the screen.
I thought it was a real guy's movie, you know, stealing cars. And I'm a car guy. I drive like an old car, 69 Nova. So I was into it right away. I was gonna bonk him.
He has a little bit of his old man in him. James Caan, which is a wonderful thing, I think. He had a lot of attitude, just had a terrific physical presence as well as a comedic presence.
Mirror Man here, he's an electronics expert. You know, he's got some gadgets that you old farts probably never heard of.
First time I read the script, knew it would be action-packed. I'm a comedian originally, so I was wondering, I was like, where are the jokes? There's no jokes in the script. But it's good, you know, they let me go with it. Now it's kind of like action comedy type thing going on.
You take real good care of this car, and I'll take care of you.
Tell you what, save it and get another one of these suits, all right?
TJ Cross never acted before. He's a comedian, just a funny kid, and we wanted to bring some humor into it. A take came in, and the guy just cracked us up.
This is my first movie. Got in my first audition. I mean, I knew when I saw the character description, I was like, that's something maybe I could play. And I knew it was a good opportunity, but I was like, can I act? So when I went in, the lady was like, you're doing good, you're doing great. I was like, all right, you tell everybody that so they don't get mad, you know. And come to find out, I ended up getting it.
What exactly can you do with the computer, Toby?
I can hack into the DMV mainframe. I can change VIN numbers. I can change addresses, registrations. I can do a lot of really tricky stuff.
I'm the youngest, which is funny because I'm older than all the guys. But I play the youngest car thief. He's supposed to be like a computer genius, which is pretty ironic because I don't know anything about computers either, so.
William Lee Scott really brought the innocence to the role. He's the one that Kip relates to as his younger brother, as it were.
What's up, kid? Toby, what are you doing? You think you're coming with us, but you're not.
What are you talking about, man? I'm part of the team. I get to go.
No, wake up. You're gonna end up in jail or in the morgue or some shit. Don't be stupid.
A couple years ago, I was just waiting tables in New York. I didn't think I'd ever get to be around this group of people. I'm like, wow, the whole time. Anytime I get to talk to Nicolas Cage or Robert Duvall, I'm like, holy cow. Something really strange is going on here.
I woke up one morning and thought, I'm no longer a destroyer. I'm a means of resurrection. Now we restore,
we revive.
Otto, he was described as sort of the Yoda of car thieves. But it was like fun because I could be really flowery with him.
The Ferrari 365 GTB4 Daytona, here it peaks at 5,500 RPM.
Before he was a destroyer at the chop shop, which is more destructive, and now he's celebrating the fact that he's all about second chances.
You know, revive, restore. That means a resurrection now, rather than breaking them down. You know, now it's rejuvenation time.
No, his criminal career has come to an end.
Well, his life will come to an end unless we pull this off. And how can we do it without him?
You never in your wildest dreams, like, think you're going to get Robert Duvall.
Oh, yeah, that was good. Yeah, you break it, you buy it, my friend.
Yeah, she got some power going on.
He's a legend. He's Academy Award winner. I mean, the guy's the greatest, so you got to go with the best. We're lucky to get him.
I had tears in my eyes. Just hearing Robert Duvall say my words was like ridiculous. I was kicking Jerry under the table. I'm sure he like had this big bruise like afterwards because I was like, this is unbelievable. Oh my God, Robert Duvall. I like going out and called my mother. I called everybody. It was amazing.
He is the classic old, you know, car thief, and you believe he's the real deal.
Just a minute. Good one. Playback.
Cut.
Sounds like the left bank's running lean.
This notion of a female car thief to me was really cool. And also the idea that when they were in love, they really got off on the adrenaline and the whole thing. And that was this great thing about being together.
What do you think is more exciting, having sex or stealing cars? She's so focused on her cars, like when she gets in the Ferrari warehouse. Hello, ladies. She's not even a part of the group and like everybody hanging out and like being friends. She just wants to like make love to her cars and like get her man back. To her, it's a very sexual thing, actually. Like when he steals a car, it's sex to her.
This is not a lot of girls that are sexy and beautiful that you also will buy as car thieves. And Angelina has that quality of she's just like tough and she's very street, but she's also attractive.
What I like about her is she's not a woman who's, you know, I hate men and she loves them. She's not going to deny that. She's kind of like, yeah, come on, bring it on.
You know, she created the look herself and did a brilliant job of it. And that was her character. I mean, that look came from inside, how she interpreted the character.
You've got a call.
As I was figuring out the team in my head, right from that very first day, I wanted a guy called the Sphinx, and they called him the Sphinx because he didn't say anything.
Legend has it that he had a really bad accident, and he come out of it, and he had never spoke a word since, like, you know. So he goes his own way, you know, and he just really hasn't got time for anybody. You know, he ain't got time for having conversations and stuff like that. You know, he's in his own world.
Check this out.
And I always said, if you get the really scariest guy and you get the funniest young kid, you will want to cut to them all the time because they will play off of each other.
I told you I'm running this shit. You do that again, I will kick. Cool, man. Damn, you got to take it so damn personal.
The character doesn't speak until the end of the film, so he had to just be an intriguing presence. Great face, great mannerisms, physical presence about him, and yet do it without saying anything. And Vinnie Jones is just terrific. I mean, he's a soccer player, a legendary soccer player. All of Europe knows who he is. Because I thought, well, I'll have this soccer player and we'll have to tell him everything, you know. But he was, he's a real natural, and he was just wonderful.
Whenever Memphis is in trouble, he seems to appear. He's like a little bit psychic, you know. There's something strange about this guy. There's something's not right with this bloke. You just can't work it out.
It turns out the Sphinx is Jerry's favorite character now, I swear. You get so much out of this creepy, creepy, creepy guy.
Don't look at me, look at the people next to you. Look on the turn the wheel.
You find poor Donnie Ostricki, the victim of a hapless driving student. He's a driver's ed instructor now, and he's going out of his mind.
Pull over! Pull the hell over!
You ever been behind the wheel of a car with a student driver? You'd go steal cars, too.
We were sitting around the table reading the script, and we brought some actors in to read roles we hadn't cast yet. And Shai came in and read, and we said, you're on.
Those cars are at the police impound. Okay, the police impound. You want us to go there and start stealing cars? Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Man, you are crazy.
Let's do it. Come on.
Where are the keys?
They're in the back room in the desk.
You're tripping, Memphis.
Donnie's the fun-loving, freewheeling guy. What's that phrase they like to use in Hollywood? Oh, yeah. He's like a gentle giant. Just cuddly. That's why I grew the beard, so I could be more warm and fuzzy. See the fuzzy?
I get this call from this uniform, you know. Says, guess who's back in town? I say, who? He says, Randall Raines. I say, Randall Raines, the car thief? He says, yeah.
6 years ago, when Memphis was in his prime and stealing cars, there was a detective who was on to him and spent years trying to catch him. His name is Detective Castlebeck, played by Delroy Lindo in the film. And when Memphis comes back to town, this sort of competition begins again.
Yes! Yes! Here is our list.
Delroy's hell-bent on catching this guy, you know, and he'll break the rules. He'll do whatever he has to do to put him away.
You roll through a stop sign, or you cross the street outside of a crosswalk. You make one slip, and I will put you away for good.
We wanted somebody to play the role of the detective so it wouldn't become this sort of conventional, I'm gonna get you for what you did in the past, you know, character. And we met with Delroy and had a great meeting. He said, I don't want to be a cliched detective. And we said, amen, sign here.
One of my concerns about doing this part was that it just be the cop. Dom has been completely open and adaptable with regard to not making this character a stick figure. Here I am smack dab in the middle of a moral dilemma, Randall. You've torn this town to shreds with that little escapade of yours, but I understand what brought you back here. A brother's love is a brother's love.
I think that Memphis and Castlebeck would be friends if it weren't for the fact that they were on the wrong side of the fence for each other.
A big model for Castlebeck was Charles Durning in The Sting, who played the cop, Snyder, who had this thing for Redford forever. And literally every time, in the most inopportune moments, he would pop up.
Easy way or the hard way, Raines. Easy way or the hard way.
What do you know about Raymond Calitri?
Who?
Raymond Calitri.
They call him the Carpenter.
He's a jackal. He's real bad. And he's an asshole to boot.
We went round and round about who this sort of villain should be, and there are the usual names come to mind, and we thought, well, see, these guys have all sort of done it a million times. Who can we get that is fresher?
Raymond Calitri, Memphis Raines.
I was pounding on Dominic for quite a while to hire Chris. I thought he was brilliant, Elizabeth, and just a real consummate actor.
I try to learn your ways, understand your obsessions. But this baseball, it's so bleeding boring, isn't it?
Tried to hold off on anything sadistic or unnecessarily evil about him. He's just, he's a businessman.
10 grand. Me to you.
I wish it was that easy.
He's so good that we were shooting a scene with he and Nick when they first meet one another, and I'm shooting Nick's coverage so I can't see Chris's face, and there's this intimidation going on between them. So I take a break and I go over to Chris and I say, Chris, well, why don't you lean forward and, you know, so you look more intimidating and you know, really scare him. And Nick said, you should take a look at it from my side. He said, he's scaring the shit out of me already with that face of his. He doesn't have to lean at me. He's mighty intimidating.
And that's not right, that's a humiliation. Because I'm the arsehole who said I could deliver. Am I an arsehole? Do I look like an arsehole?
Yeah.
Christopher didn't know exactly what he was in for when he took the role, so he didn't know that he was going to have to fall 3 stories.
So I had to cling on 50 foot up. I'm not great with heights. With my face big in camera. And on a count of 3, 2, 1, I'd just fall back and fire off a shot.
He actually did it 4 or 5 times or something. It was just insane. He was really a good sport about it.